How deep is your love? How deep is your love? How deep is your love? How deep? How deep? How deep is your love? How deep? How deep? How deep? How deep is your love? How deep is your love? How deep? How deep? How deep? How deep? How deep is your love? How deep is your love?
Thank you. How deep is your love? I felt that one. How deep is your love? Our theme this Black History Month is love. One would think that this is the easiest subject to speak on, but it's not. Love can be a challenge. Besides that, everybody already think they know what it is and how to do it. The question, how deep is your love, is of profound importance because it touches the core of our very being and the essence of our relationships with self and with others. This inquiry compels us to wrestle with the concepts, ideas, and the depths of this most sacred of human feelings. We are called to embody love in its most radical form, extending compassion not only to those easy to love, but also to those with whom we disagree, to those from different walks of life, and to those who challenge us to expand our understanding of love. Love demands we look beyond our immediate circles and extend our compassion to our neighbors. In this corner of the universe, each of this planet's inhabitants, all of creation, is our neighbor. I recently ran across a poignant yet inspiring story in the New York Times about an unwavering bond between two vastly different individuals brought together right here in Oklahoma under circumstances that would test the very limits of compassion and understanding for most people. This tale of Devin Moss, a chaplain from Brooklyn, New York, and Philip Hancock, a man on death row in McAlester, Oklahoma, deeply moved me. Their story, though seemingly distant from the experiences you and I may have had, is profoundly connected to the very essence of a deeper love within our shared humanity. Shortly after becoming a chaplain, Moss received a notification from the American Humanist Association about a team of lawyers in Oklahoma who had a very special, a very specific request. They represented a client on death row who refused to see a chaplain unless this was someone who didn't believe in God, an atheist or humanist chaplain. Now, it's telling that they had to look outside of Oklahoma to find a non-religious chaplain. I'm just saying, why didn't they just Google it? But I digress. You see, it had been only a few years earlier that Moss had made a remark that he didn't think it was possible for him to be a chaplain because of the fact that he didn't believe in God. At which time his mentor, the Reverend Trudy Hirsch Abramson, who had encouraged him to pursue chaplaincy, responded, "Neither do I." But then she said to Moss, "The question is, what do you believe in? What do you believe in?" You see, Moss was raised in a Christian home and an environment, but struggled with his faith from an early age. His journey took a significant turn while he was in a film degree program at the University of Texas at Austin. where he found himself writing scripts about existentialism. This period of exploration led him to delve into Buddhist philosophy and study great thinkers like Friedrich Nietzsche, Baruch Spinoza, and Joseph Campbell. Through these experiences, it became clear to him that existentialist perspectives offered more clarity and resonance. They just made more sense than the Christian teachings of his youth. Folks, he was an atheist. And despite this shift away from traditional belief in God, Moss continued to seek a sense of spiritual purpose and meaning beyond the confines of his upbringing. Hancock, the death row inmate, was also raised Christian. But he would eventually abandon his faith as during his early years in prison, he had come to feel more and more abandoned by God. That didn't deter him from continuously seeking and studying the Bible. In fact, he had a strong command of scriptures that often quoted verse after verse, better than some of the best preachers I ever heard, said Moss. He could out-argue mostly anyone, and he especially took to highlighting all the violence in the Bible. Philip Hancock had been sentenced to death due to his involvement in the fatal shootings of two Oklahoma men, Robert Lee Jett Jr. and James Vincent Lynch, whom he killed during an argument. After the incident, he managed to evade capture by fleeing and hiding for a year before authorities finally apprehended him. Once in prison, Hancock sensed a new purpose in fighting for his life. I'm not done yet. I love life, and I'm going to fight to the bitter end, he said. Now, seeing the finality of his life, Hancock was adamant about how he would face his last days. He would maintain his dignity. He would die a proud atheist. But in his heart, he desperately wanted to believe in something. He once remarked, I want more than anything to believe in something other than this. I just can't do it, though, lacking evidence. And Chaplain Moss struggled with what he had to offer this condemned man. For months, he had felt that he wasn't accomplishing much or didn't know if he was helping him because during their weekly phone conversations, he mostly listened to Hancock quote and wrestle with Scripture. He asked his mentor, Reverend Trudy, for advice. She told him, simply ask Hancock what he wanted Moss to do. When he did get around to asking him, Hancock answered immediately, as if he had been waiting all along for this one question to be asked. He said, show me something real. Tell me something true. With the deadline looming, the chaplain confronted the shared uncertainty of their situation, realizing that the most authentic thing he could offer was his presence. So Moss took action. He sublet his apartment in Brooklyn, packed up his belongings, and relocated to McAllister to be with Hancock in his final weeks. This act of compassion profoundly impacted Hancock, who remarked, hey, Devin, man, you're blowing me away. You're showing me something I haven't seen. I don't recall anybody really coming through like this, he said. Now, this reminded me of a message from my colleague, Reverend Kate Braystrop, which she delivered here recently, in which she asserted that real heroes are marked by the scent of their sacrifices. Fire, smoke, sweat, and tears. They dive into chaos, save lives, and embrace the grind that comes with making a real difference. That's love in action, she said. Moss would later remark, quote, compassion doesn't always ask you to understand. It just says, hey, show up with your heart. It's a form of support that doesn't demand understanding. Rather, it is showing up with an open heart, ready to accompany someone through their journey, holding their hand rather than merely empathizing. Now, during their time together, they discussed their love of poetry. Hancock was especially fond of Rudyard Kipling's poem, If, to which he often turned to for comfort. A few lines from the poem read, "If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting or being lied about, don't deal in lies. Or been hated, don't give way to hating." And the two of them had numerous discussions on a variety of subjects, even heaven, hell, and salvation. But neither of them clung to the hope of a divine intervention in this case. Instead, they understood that if mercy came, it would come from Oklahoma Governor Stitt's compassion. Their faith lay not in a higher power, but in human potential, the capacity for kindness, healing, and peace among ourselves. They both believe that we all possess the ability to make a difference in our own lives and the lives of others. So we mustn't give up on each other. But the lawyers and the victims' families fought for Hancock's execution. And I get it. I get it when families who've lost someone they love want the person responsible to pay. They're coming from a place of deep hurt and loss, and it feels like it's the only way to make things right. I guess. Wanting that kind of justice is about needing closure and trying to make sense of something that's just senseless. It's not just about anger. It's about love for the person they lost. And we can't blame these families for how they feel. But to the disappointment of the family, they will not find their peace with an eye for an eye. It will be forgiveness and love that will heal theirs and our hearts. Reinhold Niebuhr said, "Forgiveness is the final form of love." But I can somewhat identify with the pain and frustration felt by the families involved in Hancock's case. My own journey through grief came with the loss of one of my brothers who was killed in his own apartment by someone he thought was a friend. And the perpetrator evaded capture as well. But once apprehended, he confessed to the crime and said he was glad that he did it and that my brother deserved it because he was gay. But forgiving was our path to affirming that my brother's life held value. It was a journey of reclaiming our peace and dignity in the face of a profound loss, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit when confronted with the depths of sorrow. I know this. And it's true, forgiveness is an act of self-love. We do it for ourselves. It is a compassion that understands the humanity in Hancock's struggle, in the victim's family's grief, and in our own journey through loss. It is compassion that recognizes our shared humanity even when locked in the deepest shadows of pain and loss. They watched that clock that morning, waiting for Governor Stitt to grant clemency, something that the Pardon and Parole Board had recently voted in favor for Hancock. But it wasn't to be. That call came in, and it was to move the execution forward. But before leaving that holding cell, Moss offered his friend a final prayer, a humanist prayer. We call the spirit of humanity into this space, Moss prayed. That love fill our hearts. We ask that in this transition into peaceful oblivion, that Phil feels that love. He feels that love. And although this is his journey, that he is not alone. We invoke the power of peace, strength, grace, and surrender. Amen. As Hancock was led down the Green Mile, fellow inmates said their goodbyes in the only way they knew how, by kicking and pounding on the doors and raising their voices, filling the prison with the sound of solidarity, acknowledging the life and humanity of the departing condemned one. In love, my friends, all is unified. It connects Christian, Muslim, Jew, and atheist, and gay and straight, the weak and the strong, the right and the wrong. Maya Angelou once wrote, I look to a time when brotherhood needs no special recognition, when the family of man stands shoulder to shoulder, and all that matters is being human. Not only had the chaplain touched the soul of a dying man, but the inmate, Philip Hancock, had also made a life-changing impact on Chaplain Moss. Moss, in that dying chamber, turned and offered his final words to Hancock. He said, in the beginning of this, when I asked you really what you really wanted out of a spiritual care advisor, it was from Philippians chapter 4, he said. Show me something real. Show me something true. Moss looked at the face he had come to know well. What is real, my friend, is that you are loved. What is true is you are not alone. True love is that real presence that stands by us in our darkest moments, offering a sense of companionship and peace, regardless of our circumstances or beliefs. And that presence usually is always fleshly. In the end, Phil Hancock's life mattered. And in the end, the compassion between them was something real and true. Remember that our every gesture of kindness, our every act of compassion, no matter how small, contributes to a collective force that can transform our relationships, our communities, and indeed our world. Remember, it doesn't matter. Every act of compassion, no matter how small, transforms us. This is our challenge, and it is also our greatest opportunity to be agents of love in a world that so desperately needs it. Folks, our survival literally depends on it. Author and motivational speaker, loveologist, and my friend Todd Houston said of love, quote, we need to only go as far as our heart to find love, and only as far as our neighbor to share it. So how deep can you take your love? The answer is to you and you alone. And that is as deep as you are willing to dive.